Welcome to Your Wise Self with Sara, the podcast that invites you to embark on a journey of self-discovery, growth, and transformation. Thank you for joining me, Sara, as I explore the profound wisdom that resides within each of us, waiting to be uncovered and embraced. Today, we are visiting about what a health coach is, their role in healthcare and mental health, and the benefits of hiring a board-certified health coach. I have Dr. Cherie O'Neill here today as our featured guest. Dr. O'Neill is the Integrative Health and Wellbeing Health Coaching Program Director at the Earl E. Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. She is also the owner and CEO of Wellness Coaching Elevated, a company dedicated to upskilling health and wellness coaches, and an NBHWC approved training program, the School of Inclusion Health Coaching. Dr. O'Neill was a senior manager of design and development at Western Governors University Academy, a startup in education that uses health coaching methodology and emotional intelligence interventions to help students manage stressors of college life. She is a former concentration track director, associate professor, adjunct professor, and the PhD in health science program at Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions. She taught courses in wellness coaching and currently serves as a mentor for PhD students whose dissertations are related to wellness coaching effectiveness and efficacy. She is a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine and serves as the Exercise is Medicine Credential Committee and authored the Behavior Change module of the new EIM certification exam. She has served as an EIM emerging leader and speaks frequently on the topic of exercise and wellness coaching in healthcare. She is a contributing author to the American Council on Exercise's Professional Guide to Health and Wellness Coaching textbook. Dr. O'Neill has worked in various capacities in health and wellness fields, including federal grants, health departments, health insurance companies, and healthcare systems, in addition to education. She has several certifications, including ACSM Certified Exercise Physiologist, Physical Activity in Public Health Specialist, Exercises Medicine Level 2 Credential, and a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. In addition, Dr. O'Neill is a certified health and well-being coach through Well Coaches and is a qualified administrator of the Intercultural Development Inventory. Welcome, Dr. O'Neill.
Thanks, Sara. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And my goodness, you have just such an awesome and impressive background. I'm really grateful that you are my professor and that I got to work with you at the University of Minnesota while I was going through the health and wellness coaching program. And so clearly you are the person to be talking to today about this topic of health and wellness coaching, specifically transforming well-being and the benefits of how and why we would work with a board certified coach. So start us off by just sharing a little bit about how you started down this path and what your passion is behind it.
First off, just you reading that bio makes me think all that means is I'm old. I originally started out as an exercise science student and then moved into exercise physiology with my master's and did some internship work most of us do in exercise physiology within cardiac rehab. And probably no surprise to anyone listening, most individuals have a heart attack, go through cardiac rehab, and then they come back after their second heart attack. So you see patients multiple times after multiple heart attacks. And I kept thinking over and over again after seeing patients multiple times, we're not doing something right. Why is this not working? And that helped me grasp why behavior change is so important. And I just dove down that route and I never looked back. That path just enlightened me. It made me realize we're doing a lot of things wrong in health and healthcare. And it really energized me to learn more and to get better at the behavior change process with patients, clients, because that truly is the only answer that's going to make change for good. So that was kind of how it all started.
And what I'm hearing you say too, there's a gap. This person has something happen like the heart attacks, and then they're coming back perhaps within whatever the timeline is. I don't know if there's a specific timeline with a second heart attack. So in between, the behavior change wasn't happening. They kind of went back to their old patterns, which ultimately resulted in them having another heart attack.
Definitely. If you think about just your everyday life right now, if you go in and see your primary care provider, if you have one, which means you probably are working full time. So if you're not working full time, you probably don't even have one. But let's say you do. You go in and you visit with your primary care provider and they say to you, you probably should eat more fruits and vegetables, lower your stress, maybe maybe you should move your body more, things like that. And you agree or not, whatever, and say, okay, thank you. And you leave. And there's this big gap between that appointment and the next appointment, usually a year later, where you've agreed to improve your lifestyle, maybe your habits, but there is no help for that. There's no assistance. You are completely on your own. And that is the gap in healthcare. Health coaching will be able to fill and support and increase access to these behavior change processes that we just don't get support for.
That's incredible. And it is really exciting. The field and industry as a whole with health coaching, I think we are up to around 11,000 board certified health coaches now, which is honestly really a small number, really.
Right.
I mean, we're going to be continuing to grow exponentially over the coming years. And so did health coaching come out of truly this need within healthcare, or what was the driving force that you saw as health coaches evolved from where they started and where they are today?
It's interesting, the history of health coaching. So we're actually in the United States, we're behind. Health coaching was in Europe and Australia long before we ever even looked at it in the United States. So honestly, we just borrowed from them, noticed it was working in other countries. And I think that's typically how these things start. And I do think there was this view of being a partner with healthcare eventually, but it didn't start out that way. The whole idea was that health coaches would operate as independent business owners, knowing over time, and it was going to take a long time, that we would eventually expand access by getting into healthcare. It took about 10 years, which is very fast for a discipline to get into healthcare, I think. It's almost unheard of.
You've already alluded to this with the cardiac rehab and that scenario. Where do you see health coaches working in the healthcare industry specifically, and giving us just a little bit more about the qualifications and things that they would be doing to help?
Health coaches should be in places where telling people what to do doesn't work. If you tell someone what to do, most likely they will not change their behavior as a result of you telling them what to do. Education does not change behavior. And so if we think about all the places within healthcare that we tell people what to do and then expect them to change, that's where a health coach should be, because it doesn't work. The behavior change process is much more complex. So at a broad level, I'll say that. Now, in terms of where health coaches can or should be working, we definitely have a tight scope of practice. And I would argue primary care is the best position for us starting out, because behavior change is often the most recommended thing that we hear from a primary care physician. And health coaching is so broad. We have so many areas of our life, in well-being in particular, where we can change a facet of our life. So it seems like that broad approach fits best with primary care to start out. But what's interesting about health coaching is we do have health in the name, and that is important. We are not disease experts, condition experts. That's not our role. There are so many people in healthcare that are experts in a lot of diseases, and that is great. We want them, we need them. But that's not the role of a health coach, to be an expert in diabetes, to be an expert in cardiovascular disease. We're experts in the change process, the behavior change process, to even be more specific. Yes, understanding the basics about these diseases and conditions and prevention are super important, but the basics is all you need. Really, we want to be experts in behavior change psychology, behavior change theory, positive psychology, communication skills, building trust and rapport, which we know is a predictor of patient outcomes. Those are the things that start to really matter when it becomes to being a health coach. So it can be kind of misleading. People sometimes think we're experts in disease, and we really don't need to be.
That's a really helpful clarification. There's a lot of programs out there that are certifying health coaches all the time. Mm-hmm. What is the difference between a board certified health coach and other programs?
It's important for your listeners to know too, so we can make really informed decisions about our future careers and certifications and things like that. So the main difference is that those that attend a nationally board of health and wellness coaching approved program means that the program has gone through an extensive vetting process to ensure that they're upholding standards, and not just standards in terms of the knowledge of health coaching, but standards in terms of ethics, standards in terms of scope of practice, standards in terms of confidentiality confidentiality and privacy. And so when you're going through a program that's been NBHWC approved, you know that that program is being held to a standard that is for your benefit and the client or patient's benefits for obviously safety reasons and things like that. So when we're looking for a health coach, we really want to make sure that you're finding a board certified health coach, because then you know they've gone through a program that upholds that standard. And then the other piece to it is, in order to be a nationally board certified health and wellness coach, you have to have done many coaching sessions, so lots of practicing. You have to have gone through an approved program, and you have to sit for a very extensive exam administered by the same folks who administer the MD exam. Not an easy exam. It's 4.5 hours. And so you know at least a baseline level, your coach has the competencies to at least be a solid coach coming out of the gate versus someone who's kind of finding their way and perhaps not knowing all the ethics and privacy and HIPAA policies and things like that. I'm not saying that everyone exists and doesn't, know those things, but super important, I think, for all sorts of reasons.
All these different aspects that really boils down to a level of professionalism that is really significant. Along those lines, what is ultimately the significant impact that a health coach is going to have on someone's life?
I think a lot of times we focus on the short-term impact that professions have on patients' lives, which is fantastic. But what makes health coaching in particular very different is we're talking about an impact that's long-term. We're not talking 6 months. We're not talking even a year, I would say is still short-term. We're talking about making an impact that's for a lifetime. So that can simply mean changing someone's mindset, changing someone's perspective, helping to change someone's approach to their work, to their family, to their relationships. What we work on are long-term changes that can benefit someone for a lifetime. And I would even argue generational, because we know that once an individual, and the mom tends to be, or the woman in the family tends to be the most influential in this regard, where if they become healthier or more mindful or more emotionally intelligent, that will impact the children almost immediately. Key factor is short-term versus long-term behavior change.
Lifetime. That was really impactful when you said that. Yes, a lifetime impact versus just making these short little differences here and there, which obviously those can be important, but reality is what you said earlier about the cardiac rehab is somebody might be scared and they make a change for a brief amount of time, enter health coach, and then the health coach can walk side by side with them to continue that helpful, positive improvement and behavior change that you spoke of versus them going home and eventually they just kind of maybe fall into old patterns.
Definitely.
Very powerful. The next thing that I'm curious about is for the listeners to hear a little bit more about mental health and emotional well-being as it pertains to health coaches. Mental health is continuing to be more public, more talked about. The stigma is starting to go away in terms of people being more open about talking about their mental health issues. Clearly, health coaches are not therapists, but they can help support mental health and emotional well-being. So will you take us down that path a little bit about how a health coach can support that and then how we're different from a therapist?
Absolutely. So there's two ways I think that really stand out in terms of health coaches supporting mental health. One way that I think health coaches can really support mental health is to be the conduit to get someone into mental health care. We're starting to see a trend where if a person is not really excited to see a therapist for many reasons, mostly stigma related or culturally related. But if they're not excited to see a therapist, they will sometimes see a health coach. So we can be that conduit to then eventually refer them to therapy. And they might, because we have a trusting relationship, they might actually go to therapy. That's one side effect of health coaching, is that we're probably going to get more people into therapy that need it. We're trained on how to refer for mental health conditions. So we definitely have that knowledge to be able to make the referral. Again, we are not trained in any mental health conditions that we would really dive deep into. For example, if someone has depression, we are not going to serve in the role of helping them improve their depression and talk about their past. That would be way out of our scope of practice as a health coach. coach. But what we can do, and perhaps even while they're seeing a therapist, is work on things that are complementary to things that you would do to decrease your depression. So moving your body more, working on a positive mindset, growth mindset, working on improving your nutrition or your stress management deeply impacts your depression if you have it. So there's these synergistic behavior changes we can make that are so complementary to someone that has perhaps a mental health condition. We're an amazing partner for mental health practitioners, I think, for that reason. Those two reasons I think are super important.
That's really helpful. To your point, bringing in that conduit of having the opportunity to speak with somebody, because sometimes what you're saying too is that for insurance reasons, they can't afford it or they can't get in with the therapist, that there's ways that we can just work on what's happening in the here and now that we can work through. Whereas as part of what I learned through school is that therapy oftentimes dives back into more the childhood issues and things that have evolved over the person's life and got them to where they are today. One of the ways I've always looked at it was therapy is when I'm feeling at 0 or below, and health coaching is where I'm at 0, 1, or 2, and I want to keep that momentum growing. And what I mean by that scale is just like a feeling level. If I'm in a negative space or negative headspace, then that's where I'm like, I might need more therapy versus I'm seeing the future. I'm seeing where I want to get to. I want to keep this path going. And obviously that also pertains to the different levels of behavior change and where people are at in that process. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yeah, I really like that visual. It sounds to me too, if you ever read Adam Grant's work, he talks about this phase or this feeling of languishing. And I love that word because it really represents, I feel like, where a coach can step in. Languishing meaning you're on autopilot. You're going through the motions of your day to day, but something doesn't quite feel right. You're feeling sort of off, or you're feeling like, I don't really have anything to look forward to. I'm not personally growing in any domain of my well-being. I'm just day to day going through the motions. And that's kind of how he describes languishing. And I feel like that's what you're describing. And then when a coach comes in, we can pull jointly together, work together to pull out of languishing and get you more forward facing and embracing more of that personal growth, whether it is in health and well-being or other areas of your life.
And that's why I love health coaching so much. It's a great word and a great example to share with the audience too. So thank you for that. Along those lines, could you walk us through what we might expect in a session with a health coach?
Absolutely. Generally, just looking at a standard industry report is what I'm referencing. A health coaching session often looks like the first session, 45 minutes. It's a lot of get to know you, understand why you're coming to health coaching, what your vision is or reasons for coming, and getting clarity on why we're doing this thing called health coaching. So that's generally the first session. And then usually the follow-up sessions are 30 minutes typically. And often it starts out with a little rapport building, a little clarity on how you're mentally, physically doing that day in that moment, and then deciding together on a focus for the session. And that focus can get renegotiated as you talk and things change, but just deciding on that initial focus. So by the end of the session, I want to accomplish X, and then exploring that focus area and then coming up with a plan at the end, whether that be to think about something more or actually setting real goals that are physical goals, whatever that looks like. I think what's so different about health coaching compared to any other appointment people go to is you come with the idea of what you want to talk about. So it's in your court from the start. Health coaches don't ever tell you what to do or give advice. Just to be honest, we don't want to be doing a whole lot of that without permission, especially. It's a very different encounter because we're so used to being told what to do, how to do it, when I should do it. You know, we get like a quote unquote prescription, but in health coaching, it's all the way in your court. You decide the when, the how, the where. I'm not really invested in that as a health coach. I'm just invested in helping you go along the change process that you define for yourself. So it's quite different.
That's, again, another reason why I really appreciate health coaching. And I think that we've talked a couple of times now about this behavior change model. And so just to maybe give a tiny background on that is that we're looking at that pre-contemplation, contemplation, moving into action. That's the stages of change that we're referring to. And I think the other thing that might be important for us to note as well is that behavior change is not linear.
Mm-hmm.
and that people can come in ready to change and then the next time could fall back to pre-contemplation, for example. Can you share a little bit more about that model and how that works in relation to a client?
Yeah, definitely. It's one model that health coaches know, or framework that we use. I think we can all relate to this, where we have hired a personal trainer and we're ready to go. And then something happens 2 weeks in, and now you don't feel like you really want to be doing this anymore, or something changed in your life. And so you went from action to perhaps contemplation, like, do I really want to be doing this anymore, given this thing that changed in my life? So as a health coach, we understand that non-linearity and adjust our strategies based on where someone is at, or where we feel they're presenting at. So the strategies for a pre-contemplator, which is someone who absolutely has no interest in changing, which is often the case when I was a tobacco cessation coach, where I was often in that scenario where there really is no interest in quitting. So the strategies I would use with that patient or client are completely different than someone who's in preparation and getting ready to change, has signed up for the support group and hasn't quite started yet. Those strategies of how I would communicate with that patient or client are very different. As health coaches, we understand how to adjust and amend and be flexible depending on where they're at on any given week, because it does change constantly. Yes. That's what we can always expect, right? Change.
Change is always going to happen. It's always going to be there. I think we hear a lot out in social media and all these different avenues that it takes 3 weeks to make a change. And the reality is that's not really true.
Absolutely. There's all the trending things, hashtags of change. When I hear those things, my first thought is, well, what kind of change are we talking about? Are we talking about flossing more? Are we talking about writing in a planner or journal? Or are we talking about increasing our physical activity? Because those changes are quite different in terms of effort. So we have to be very mindful about what kind of change and not generalize based on just change in general. So the literature is a little fuzzy on this depending on type of change. But when we're talking about health behavior change, minimum 12 weeks, minimum. I would argue it's longer. I think the key about change in terms of health behavior is we're trying to make a habit. That's what our ultimate goal is with changing a health behavior, is where it becomes a habit where you don't have to put in that much effort anymore. You don't have to think about it and plan for it. It's just, these are automatic behaviors, kind of like brushing your teeth. We don't really think much about that anymore. Hopefully, maybe most of us.
Some teenage boys, maybe.
Yeah. You're right. I was just thinking about my son. He's 17. He still has to think about it.
We still have to remind them, yes.
Yes. At one time, I was probably the same way. So it's that piece of turning it into a habit. And anytime we're trying to make something a habit, it's going to take longer. It just will.
The level of effort is going to directly impact how long it's going to take. And then also what you were saying too is it turns from something that might feel like a to-do list to a habit to just really part of who they are.
It's not a to-do thing. It's a to-be thing. So not a to-do list, but a to-be list. The other thing about habit too is a lot of times health behaviors have a lot of emotional energy behind them, or emotional attachment, or emotional history. So if we think about, I'm not giving away my age, but in my gym class days in elementary school, you did your pull-ups, like the physical fitness test, in front of the whole class. And how mortifying and shameful that was, because often girls at a very young age can't get one pull-up. That is humiliating as a child to have to do that in front of your old class. So there's a lot of emotion tied with a lot of health behaviors we have to really be mindful of too, which is why it can take so long. You're really undoing a lifetime of thoughts around a certain behavior that you're perhaps having to undo or reframe.
Yeah, that we all have those horrible memories. I think they're still doing the 1 mile run test, right?
I think
Pull-ups, running, all of those things that it's just, Ugh. Health coaching has been around for a number of years now. So historically, you kind of gave us that perspective of the evolution that's happening there. What do you see it evolving into going forward, and how that's going to play out in healthcare or otherwise?
I would love to have the ability to see into the future and predict. So I'll do my best. But we do know that health coaching entering healthcare is going to happen. Now, the timeline and the processes and where, probably still a little fuzzy. But the reason why I say that is because the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services did take a step forward in that they released telehealth codes for health coaches in January 2024. Now, there's no reimbursement reimbursement tied to those codes yet, so they're not really in use. But it is a big step forward for CMS to say, hey, we value health coaching. We're going to move forward and introduce these reimbursement codes. So that tells me, okay, we're headed in that way. It's probably not going to be much longer. And we know there are some health insurance companies that are reimbursing health coaching right now at the regional levels or community levels. So it's happening. It will happen on the grand scale, probably within the next, I would guess, 2 to 3 years. Don't quote me, but definitely headed into healthcare. And then other areas I think that are very promising for health coaching is partnering with mental health professionals. There's a cool company called Able To that the patients, they're Medicare patients, and every other week they switch therapist coach. Really cool models that are out there looking at the synergy between the two. Also, I think senior living centers have a huge opportunity to hire health coaches for a variety of reasons, but mainly to increase mental health issues that they see so often in senior living centers, partnering with the recreational therapists in senior living centers. The time period that you're in a living center is something that it could be beautiful and optimal and full of energy and life. I just think there's huge potential there. That's starting to happen. And then I would argue life transitions, especially retirement. I think health coaches could make a huge impact in those life transitions where we keep individuals engaged in their communities longer all throughout retirement and not just the 1 year after. And then we sort of get that social isolation, which is such an epidemic right now as well. So there's lots of promising areas too.
That just made me think of so many things, and especially the senior living. I'm in Iowa, so we have a very high elderly population here. So that is significant and impactful. And those life transitions, that's another area that people are constantly experiencing. I mean, we certainly felt that in the pandemic. We've felt it at various stages of our life, whether it's switching a job or a career or getting divorced or having a baby. And I think if I can just for 1 second talk about having a baby, when we're in our 20s and going through those phases, I think we just kind of go through the motions of it and we don't always know how we're supposed to feel or what feelings are quote unquote normal. I don't like that word, but what we should be feeling or if anything does feel off. So I think that again, the more people that are out there that are aware of or people can access for help. I love that model of with Able To that you talked about of somebody working with a therapist and a health coach back and forth. It sounds like there's so much knowledge and information that's out there. And yet at the same time, perhaps not always the right information. And what I alluded to earlier with this 3-week change. Oh, and then your habit is put in place after 3 weeks. Well, that's not really true. I think that all those things are just really, really impactful, and really glad that you commented about the codes and the coding that's coming forward in terms of CMS embracing this from a healthcare perspective. And we know that chiropractic and acupuncture, there's a number of other integrative type of modalities that are reimbursed through many insurance companies. Health coaching being integrative, what would you say about that in terms of tying that all together?
Absolutely. So at the University of Minnesota, our program is not called Health Coach. We were intentional about naming our program Integrative Health and Wellbeing Coach. And that integrative part is really our emphasis in our program and leadership. So health coaching is an integrative therapy. We don't get classified within integrative therapies, but we are one. And I would argue we're the one that can really get to know a patient or client and understand what other integrative modalities they would enjoy, they would like, they would be open to. So we, again, are that conduit. If we understand all the integrative therapies, which is what our program focuses on, we can then have the knowledge to understand what this client patient might really benefit from or enjoy or understand or engage with to benefit their well-being. So there's definitely this piece of integrative health and well-being that a lot of people are missing, I think, as part of the health coaching discipline. So that's one of the reasons why we exist, is to preach our integrative health ways, right? And how important they are and how we can always be integrative in terms of not just Western medicine, but include all sorts of ways that someone improves their well-being. And in fact, the Veterans Association just partnered with the academic institution. They created a doctorate in whole health coaching, and it starts up soon. And so that just tells you where the field field is heading. Whole health meaning the same thing as integrative. The Veterans Association really established that vernacular and they've run with it. And I think it's great. And they employ whole health coaches all across the nation in all VA hospitals and clinics. It's a pretty exciting time.
That is incredible and definitely very much needed. One of the things that I am passionate about health coaching and integrative health as a whole, and also yoga therapy, is Western and Eastern medicine both have a place at the table. Western medicine, we have a need for pharmaceuticals at certain points. We need surgery. We need what Western medicine has to provide. But we also have all these other modalities under Eastern philosophies, and they have been proven for thousands and thousands of years. Bringing all this to the table, again, provides that whole health, whole person care that I think healthcare is really where we want to go with it.
Definitely. And understanding there's synergy. There's actually true synergy when you do both versus just the one. And it's that synergy that becomes so powerful and so impactful in terms of patient outcomes. It's better for the patient. It's better for the practitioners because they get better outcomes. It's better for the healthcare system as a whole. It's better for our economy. I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't provide whole person care.
Amazing and wonderful. And I'm just so proud to be a part of the industry moving that forward. So as we start to wrap up, what if people wanted to learn more about health coaching? Either perhaps they're interested in studying it, or perhaps someone wants to find a health coach, which I will make a plug for myself that if anybody is interested in a health coach, I am a board certified health coach. So you could reach out to me. What else would you offer for resources that come to mind for you?
If you're thinking about becoming a health coach, you need an associate's degree to sit for the exam and go through an approved program. So it's not as difficult as most people think to actually embark on that as a future, perhaps career path or supplement to another career. One avenue is to look at the University of Minnesota. We do have a Master of Arts in Integrative Health and Wellbeing Coaching, or we offer a certificate program for those that are already working in healthcare and would like to add some of those coaching skills to their practice. Now, you're not becoming a coach in terms of just adding the skills, but those skills can definitely enhance your practice. Otherwise, there are many options that are categorized at nbhwc.org. You can find programs there, and they are categorized into for-profit, not-for-profit, and academic, meaning for credit. And a lot of times those academic programs are either a degree program or a certificate program, and they're offered at the undergraduate and graduate levels. So there is lots of avenues and different ways you can take depending on where you're at in your career in your life. And then for those seeking a health coach, the only thing I would recommend is to go to nbhwc.org and find a board certified health coach. They're all listed on the website and choose one from there. And you can look at whether you're comfortable with just online visits with your health coach, which means you could pick from anywhere in the United States. Or if you want to be face-to-face, then you can look by state and find someone locally in your area. So they have nice filter features so you can find the person that you want to work with.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been so informative and just so fun to connect with you. I really appreciate your time and energy today, Dr. O'Neill.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Sara.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Your Wise Self with Sara. I hope you found today's discussion as enlightening and inspiring as I did. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. The 5-star ratings and thoughtful reviews help me reach more listeners and continue bringing you valuable content. And as always, keep striving to become your wisest self. Until next time, be well.